Hello everyone, and welcome to Exposition of the Book of Revelation. In this video, I want to talk about some general requirements of the course, give you an overview of what to expect, as well as lay out some of the requirements for the course. I would encourage you to actually spend more time looking through the syllabus, because I will only be briefly outlining some of these things. And in many respects, there will be more information as we go through regarding what is required in each of these assignments and other things. So let's start first in thinking about Revelation. Boy, when people hear this topic, or they think about studying the book of Revelation in the Bible, it's a book that a lot of people just have a lot of either fear or trepidation. It's not something that a lot of people really spend much time with. And you know, I have heard of churches who their goal is to study the whole way through the Bible, and they go Genesis to Jude, and then start back over with Genesis again, and just avoid Revelation altogether. And so it's something that a lot of people don't want to discuss and don't want to examine. And then there's also a lot of just different voices on what Revelation is all about, what the book means, and what messages can be drawn from it. Why is it that people stay away from the book so much? Well, you know, I think that there are a couple of basic reasons for us to think about. First of all, that one of the reasons people stay away from the book is that it is, there's a lot of confusion related to Revelation, more so than perhaps most of the rest of the books of the Bible. Especially most of the rest of the books in the New Testament. In the New Testament, a lot of the books are pretty straightforward in meaning. There's certainly a lot of disagreement about interpretation of some points, but in many places there's just not as much confusion as what you get when you look at the book of Revelation. A lot of people who have spent their lives studying the Bible or reading the Bible and going to Bible class, and have a firm grasp on the rest of the Bible, might not even have any clue about Revelation. And so I think a lot of people stay away from the book because they're just not sure what to do with it. It's so unlike the rest of the New Testament, and they're just not sure what the book means. More than that, there's just so many different interpretations on Revelation. Essentially, there are four main interpretations, and we'll talk about this as we get started in the class in another lecture, but there are even variations within those four major interpretations. So there's so much information out there, and each person presents it as this is the answer. And they could be completely different than what somebody else says is this is the answer. So there's so many different interpretations about this book, more so than perhaps some other ones, that just make it difficult. And for some people, it's just better to stay away from the book than to be mired in all that confusion. Other people stay away from it just because it is so unlike other New Testament books. They don't want to really spend the time trying to work their way through it. I think some people stay away from it because of fear. Fear that they won't understand what's going on. Fear of the imagery in Revelation. And just a general fear of what they've been led to believe the book is about. And so, you know, fear can be this kind of emotional response to Revelation that leads a lot of people away from spending time with the book. And then for those that hate math, there's just too many numbers in Revelation. There's so many different numbers, and you have the number 7, of course, pops up quite frequently. There's the 1,000-year reign, there's the 144,000, and you have a third and a quarter and 3, and then of course the biggie, 666. What does that number mean? Well, hopefully as we get to that point in the course in chapter 13, we'll be able to approach that from a standpoint and from a foundation of what the book is about, and maybe make some headway into what 666 is, and not be fearful of this mysterious number that has caused so much concern to people. Now, I do want to say from the outset that I don't know what everything in Revelation is about. I will be quite honest that there are still a lot of places that I have some inkling about what's being suggested, but I'm not entirely sure what is the exact interpretation. That's not to say, though, that I don't think that there's a lot of things we can understand about Revelation where we might not know what a specific symbol means. We can at least have a good idea of the message for the original readers, and then also the message for us. So I think that despite all the things that keep people away from study of the book of Revelation, there's a lot in this book. It's very rich messages and inspiration here that can be useful to Christians. So what are we going to try and do in this course? Given that this is a book that a lot of people avoid, but you are taking the time to actually take an entire course on Revelation, spending 16 weeks on Revelation, what should you expect to get out of this? Well, I think obviously, since the word exposition is in the title, we're going to be going through the text of Revelation. We're going to be examining it, seeking to understand, what the content as far as in this chapter such and such takes place, in this chapter such and such take place. And so just having a general knowledge of, you can say, in Revelation chapter 7, these are the following events. These are the 7 churches that are written to in Revelation. And so just an understanding of the text, going through the text, talking about what are the events, what's the overall narrative in the text, but then also exploring those different interpretations. Now, certainly I believe, as most people who have an interpretation on Revelation, that I believe I know what the book is about. I believe I understand what Revelation is about, and I recognize that my understanding of it is one option within the several different options of Revelation. With respect to that, we will take the time to think about, okay, what are those various interpretations? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses of all of those, including the one I prefer? And then also, at appropriate places, addressing the various interpretations. So, here in this specific passage, if you look at it as events that are only going to take place in the future, you would understand it this way. If you look at it as something that it was fulfilled in the past, you would understand it this way. And so looking at the different interpretations, but also kind of weighing the pros and cons, and hopefully, I believe, providing you the material to make that decision yourself. Certainly, as I said, I believe, that I understand what the book is about, and I'd like to encourage you to accept that idea, but I do want it to be something that you would come to based on your examination as opposed to just me telling you, all right, so I have 3 letters after my name, and so you should accept what I say. Also, though, I think it's important to, no matter what position or interpretation that a person takes, I believe that Revelation can have a contemporary application to today's Christian. To kind of show my hands, show my cards a little bit, I believe that a lot of the things in Revelation were directed primarily to things that the first century audience of Revelation would have understood, things that they were shortly to experience, and things that they could look forward to. I believe that chapter 20, 21, the end of chapter 20, 21, and 22 are events or point to things in the future. But I believe that a lot of what was written must be understood within the context of that first century audience. Having said that, I do believe, and I would encourage, no matter what interpretation somebody holds, there needs to be some sort of application to today's Christian. That even if one were to believe that these events are going to take place hundreds of years in the future, there's got to be some word to speak to today's Christian. And I would also say that that word has to be shaped by what the word was to that first century Christian. And so, you know, we're not just going to focus on what the text said back then and to those original audiences. We'll think too about, you know, what benefit can be gained from reading this book, even if you take it as referring to things from the past. To help us accomplish that, we'll be looking at 2 texts. The first, not surprisingly, the Bible. Obviously, we'll be spending a lot of time with Revelation in class and in our lectures. We'll be going to other biblical passages because I believe there's a lot from the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, as we Christians call it, particularly the books of Ezekiel and Daniel, that are very important for understanding Revelation, but our primary text is going to be the book of Revelation. Additionally, we'll be using Steve Gregg's Revelation 4 Views. A very good work in that Gregg breaks down the text of Revelation, and as he goes through each of the chapters and sections of Revelation, he provides in 4 parallel columns how different people from the different interpretations would approach a specific passage. And I think that's very helpful. Now, my particular view on Revelation is not quite represented by Gregg, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think that there are a lot of people whose view is not necessarily represented as well by Gregg, but it is good in that it provides that parallel. So you can see in parallel what the different interpretations are. Certainly, you can get access immediately to a Bible. You may have a personal one. You can certainly download it on your iPad. There are a variety of places online you can get free copies of the Bible, so that shouldn't be a difficulty. But you need to get, as soon as possible, a copy of Gregg's Revelation 4 Views. It should be available in the Blackboard store. You should be able to just pull that right up, and right there is, for this class, is that textbook. But you need to get that as soon as possible because there are reading quizzes that will start in week 2 that will include readings from the Gregg book. So get that as soon as possible. Make sure to get the revised and updated version from 2013. There is an older version, but you want the 2013 version. Not surprisingly, we will be going through Revelation and in just kind of starting in chapter 1 going through the end of chapter 22. We will spend a little bit of time. There'll be a lecture on backgrounds that will include information regarding the different interpretations, the setting, the authorship, the dating of Revelation, so things like that, and then we'll just get into the text. And I've divided the outline. I can't remember if this is something I came up with or if this was something from somebody else, but no surprise, you have a nice little 7-point outline for this book, that 7 is so important. And so we'll certainly be looking at it in chunks, but we'll just be from lecture to lecture, moving from one chapter to the other. The syllabus, which again, I encourage you to read in its entirety, covers a couple of different things, but one section in there, of course, is the objectives. At the end of this course, there are a couple things that I want you to be able to do. First is to just talk about Revelation, to just be able to talk about the contents. These are the things that take place. These are the symbols that are used. These are, and just some general things, but then also talk about the meanings. All right, well, what does 666 mean? By the end of this course, at the very least, you should be able to talk about here are the different interpretations of 666. Secondly, I want you to be able to talk about what kind of themes, right? Not just the events, not just the contents, but themes. What are some themes in Revelation, and how is that important for the first century? How are they important for the 21st century? And then finally, being able to think about what people say about Revelation, analyze what they say, and then kind of connect that to what you've learned throughout the course. Evaluate that based on what we've talked about. The way that you will demonstrate that you are able to do those things are through a variety of assessments or assignments, activities that we have throughout the course. Reading quizzes, reflection papers, there's a video assignment in week 10, 3 exams, and then discussion board posts. We'll talk now about each of these and what's required. For each reading, there are online quizzes. These are available through Blackboard under Quizzes. Let me switch over to the Blackboard screen, and that will give you an idea. I can point out to you what's available. So when you pull up the Blackboard site, Exposition Revelation, Quizzes and Exams is over here to the left. You can also get to the quizzes based on the course content. I've broken the course down to the different weeks of the semester. As you see, there's no week 12 because there is that's the spring break week, so there will be no assignments due week 12. But for each week, I will include in this folder what you need to do, and one of those is the quizzes that you need to take. So by the end of week 2, which is next week, you will need to complete quiz 1 and quiz 2. Clicking on that will take you to the quiz. And they're live, so once you start them, you need to be ready to take them, because otherwise you'll end up not getting a good grade. So don't take them until you're ready. But under quizzes and exams, it also has listed what is on that assignment, so or what is covered under the quiz. So the first quiz is on pages 11 through 76 of Greg, and it's due January 15th. Right? So that's why I say you need to get a hold of Greg as soon as possible. So each of the quizzes consists of 5 multiple choice questions based on the reading, just some general themes, or not some general things, just some general content information. Not about meaning per se, unless it is something that you're reading in Greg, where there might be a question like, which of the following would be in accordance with the futurist position on Revelation? Right? And so that would have been something you've read in Greg, not something that you would have to come up with on your own. So do the reading, take the quiz, 5 multiple choice questions. You will have 10 minutes for each quiz. If you've done the reading, if you're prepared, you should be fine. 10 minutes should be more than enough. The first quiz, as I mentioned, is on Greg, 11 through 76, for next week. If for some reason there is a delay in you getting the Greg book, please get in contact with me as soon as possible about that, so that we can make arrangements for you to take that exam as soon as possible once you get the book in. But you need to try and get Greg as soon as possible if you don't have it already. Because of the number of quizzes in each of the because of the number of quizzes you'll take, I will drop the 2 lowest. So if you miss 2 or you just decide I don't want to do this particular one, it's not going to affect your grade. Usually there are no makeups except for extreme situations like I can't get the book on time, things like that. If something comes up, you have a health situation, a family problem, you get in contact with me, and sooner rather than later, so that we can make arrangements. But in general, there's no makeups, so if something comes up, please make sure that you get in contact with me as soon as possible about that. So reading quizzes. Second is 4 reflection papers. There are 5 opportunities throughout the semester to submit a reflection paper. You only need to submit 4 of them. If you turn in the 5th one, I will take the 4 highest grades plus give you extra points. Okay, so if you're wanting the extra points, if you're concerned, that's one way to get extra points, is through completing all 5 of the reflection papers. Very simple assignment, 500-word minimum, so that's a 1.5 page double spaced. Each of the papers is based on the reading of Revelation, so the only thing you need to do is read certain chapters in Revelation. You don't necessarily have to do any sort of outside research. You don't necessarily have to incorporate what we talked about in lecture or things in the Greg book. It's basically your reading of Revelation with a focus on contemporary application. Asking yourself, what message does this reading have for today's Christian, today's church, today's society? Those are all available under assignments. And so, for example, the first one, which is due, it's not due the 30th, that's the wrong date. I will go back and adjust those dates. I did not adjust those dates yet, I'm sorry. So the first reflection paper, in Revelation chapters 2 and 3, Jesus dictates 7 letters to 7 churches. So it was specific, but they have messages for churches for all times. So pick 3 of the letters from chapters 2 and 3, take that message and put them into a contemporary setting. So for example, if John were writing to Ephesus in the 21st century, what might they be talking about? Right? So what kind of problems do 21st century Christians have that would be similar to those addressed in the letter to Ephesus? Right? So if you have a specific church in mind, that's fine, but don't use specific names. Discuss what messages the letters as a whole have for the contemporary Christian. All right, so again, the focus is on contemporary application in these reflections, not necessarily exegesis of a particular passage. It's based on the reading, I'm not looking all the time for you to summarize, but I am looking for you to think about, okay, how can this passage speak to today's hearers? Week 10 of the semester is the Faulkner lectureship. And so the face-to-face class of Revelation does not meet that week because the rooms in the Bible building where Bible classes take place are used. So instead, that week won't include a lecture from me, but will include a lecture from N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright is a scholar of the New Testament, Anglican, or Church of England. And so what you will need to do that week is watch the video. The link will be in the Week 10 folder. And then write a paper that interacts with the information, the message, the themes that Wright points out in that video. So that's a part of the grade as well. And just as another aspect or another view, I share a lot with Wright. There's some places where I disagree with him about, on Revelation, there's some other things we disagree about, certainly since he's Anglican. But you know, it's a slightly different view, and so provide you another opportunity to think about some of the things we've been looking at. So I'll remind you as we get closer to that time. The video is not very long. The paper itself, now we're talking 2.5 pages. So again, the paper itself not very long either. More guidelines for that are found on the assignments as well. There will be 3 exams in this class, 2 unit exams and a final. The exams will take place on February 7th and March 16th. Those days are specific. A lot of the assignments you don't have to, you can complete within a week, right? So it's got to be completed by the end of this week. For the exams, you have to take them on a specific day. But since you're taking this online, part of the reason you're taking it online is the flexibility. So it's not a specific time you have to take the exam. You can take the exam, you can start the exam any day, any time on February 7th. But once you start it, you have 1 hour and 20 minutes to complete it. The same thing with the 16th. So anytime on that day, you can start the exam and then complete it. Study guides will be provided for all the exams, including the final. And those study guides will help you focus on what material to pay attention to. The exams themselves will consist of some short answer or completion questions, as well as some multiple choice questions. And then there will also be some essay questions asking you to pull material together. Each of the unit exams are not comprehensive, meaning that for exam 2, it will only be material covered from after February 7th through the 16th. And then, you know, obviously February 7th is the beginning material. The study guide, as I said, will be provided at least 2 weeks before. The final exam, very similar in format, multiple choice, completion, some short answer, as well as essay, but will also include a comprehensive component. So there'll be a section that is material that was covered after the 16th of March, but then there will also be a larger question, an essay question asking you to pull things together. And because of that, it'll be a little bit longer. You'll have 1 hour and 50 minutes. There will be a study guide provided for that as well. But I'm not exactly sure yet when the date of the final exam is, but you'll have the same situation. Any time during that day, you can start the exam, but you'll have 1 hour and 50 minutes to complete the exam for that. All of this stuff we'll say more. I'll send reminders, those kind of things as we get closer to the times. There's also a requirement to complete discussion posts each week. Each week there's a certain number of posts you must do. In general, most weeks it is 4 posts. Some posts are 2 because if there's an exam, but in general 4 posts each week. The first post each week must be done by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Now this first week, the only requirement, or the only discussion post you need to do this week is just an introductory post, introducing yourself to me in the class. Several people in the class I know from previous courses, but there were some names I don't know, so I'd like you to introduce yourself, tell us a little about yourself, what you want to get out of the book, the study of the book, just a general introduction, what year you are in school, major, anything like that. But after this, most weeks will be, that have a post by Wednesday, and then the rest of the posts need to be done by Sunday. Now, you have to do 4 posts each week. I know there are going to be some people who are right on top of it, want to get them done as soon as they can each week, just to keep on top of their work. There are going to be others that, that'll do the work better, let's say, at the end of the week. And so if you're one of those people that wants to get going, you might say, well, who am I going to respond to? How am I going to make posts? Well, when it comes to doing your discussion posts, there are a couple of things you can do. You can answer my questions that I've supplied. You can respond to other students if there are other posts available, or you can go off on your own, talk about something you were interested in. Maybe something stood out to you that I didn't particularly ask a question about. All of that's fine. So usually there'll be enough prompts, either from me or from your own thinking, that if other students haven't made any posts, you will be able to make all your posts each week. But I would encourage everyone to post early, give everybody the opportunity to interact, so that you can help each other, have some discussion, those kind of things. Let me flip back to the Blackboard site so that I can show you where that is. Discussion posts, of course, can be made under the discussion board, where you can post related to the specific chapter, etc. I already have some discussion prompts up there. Okay. Which of the 4 letters in chapter 2 says the most to you? Why? Right. So you can answer that question. You can come up with another question. Anything that you want to post, right? Related to the topic. You can also get to the discussion boards through the week folders. Right. So the videos to watch, the quizzes, right? And then introduction to Revelation post for week 2. What do you think it's all about? Why do you think there's so many different interpretations? And so you can get to them either through the discussion board link or through the course content folders. At least one post, preferably the first post, should be at least 100 words. Something substantial, something that says something. Either, and so that probably, for that first post, might be a response to one of my questions. That might be the easiest to do. The other posts have to be at least 25 words. So you can't just say, I agree, good point, I see what you're saying. You should interact with, the other post should be at least 25 words. So if you're interacting with other students, then if you want to say I agree, then you say why you agree. Or, I agree, but have you considered, right? So don't just say I agree or good point, elaborate on that or take the discussion further than just I agree or I don't agree. If you don't agree, say why. But, have something substantial to say so that we can actually try to encourage a conversation as opposed to just requiring this set of notes or set of discussion boards. If you've had me before in class, you've heard me say this before, but if you've not, go ahead and repeat it. I do my semesters out of 1,000 points. I do my courses out of 1,000 points. And so all of the total assignments add up to 1,000 points, and so you can see the breakdown there as to what each of the assignments is worth. There are two reasons for doing this. First is so that you can always know where you are in the semester and what you need to do to get the grade you want by adding up the total points you have and looking at the total points that are left. You know, if after I've taken this first exam and I've done a couple of quizzes and I've made some discussion posts, here I am at midterm, you know, can I still get that A? And if I want to get that A, what do I need to do in order to get that A? So, you know, that's an easier way than having to worry about percentages and these assignments are worth this percent and this, you know, these things are worth that percent. It's a little bit easier to keep track. The second reason for doing that is that no one assignment destroys your entire semester. You know, now if you don't do the reading quizzes, if you don't do the discussion posts, you do poorly on the first exam, it's all going to add up, but just doing poorly on the first exam isn't necessarily going to destroy your entire semester if you are, you know, working on the other things as well. So that's part of the reasons for doing that out of 1,000 points. It gives you the grading scale. 900 to 1,000 points is an A, 800 to 899 is a B, etc. We'll talk. You might have noticed that attendance was on there. We'll talk more here about attendance in a minute. Well, now, obviously you are taking this online, and taking this online at a different time than what the face-to-face class meets. So you're not attending a class in a traditional sense, but attendance and participation and engagement is very, very important in online environments. It's very easy to procrastinate and get behind in online courses. And so part of what I require you to do is to submit notes for each of the lectures that are being watched each week. Let's switch over back to the Blackboard site. One of the things in the Blackboard site is the schedule. The schedule breaks down, now according to the face-to-face meetings, right, so Tuesdays, Thursdays, etc., what topics will be discussed and the readings for that. And so what readings to read with each lecture. Most weeks there are 2 lectures to be watched. Some weeks there's only one. For example, week 6 there's an exam, and so there's only 1 lecture. Week 10 we've already talked about, the video assignment. And then of course week 12 is spring break. So the schedule gives you the different things you need to do. The course content, of course, helps you with that as well, the different folders. But for each video that you watch in a given week, you must submit notes. And so if it's better for you to do a schedule like the face-to-face class, where you do the notes on Tuesdays, you do the notes on Thursdays, that's fine. They aren't due until the end of that week. Right, so week 2 isn't due until that Sunday. You still need to do those notes. And I'm not looking for you to just give me the bullet points on the PowerPoint. The videos that you'll be watching, most of them are just PowerPoint slides. But you need to include material under those bullet points. What were the things that were talked about after that bullet point? Now, you can submit those notes, or you should submit those notes electronically, but you can do that in a couple of ways. First, some people might just like to do it on a tablet or a laptop or something like that, and you have a Word document. That's fine, just submit that. For other people, it might be better for them if they write the notes out by hand. And there's some research that indicates that that works better for retention, and so that might be something, retention of memory, so that might be something to consider. If you do write it out by hand, you can submit a picture of your notes, or you can photocopy your notes, or scan your notes, I mean. Either way, that is fine. You can submit those. Let's switch back over to the Blackboard site through the student note submission links, okay, and then according to the different weeks. But then also in the course content folders, there is a link to remind you, submit your notes here, create a journal entry, and then you can attach. If instead of doing all the notes for each of the points, you can simply provide a summary, at least 500 words, that demonstrates that you've watched each of these lectures. Here too, a couple reasons for this. First, it helps you because then you have the notes. And so as you're studying for the exam, it's all right there. You don't have to try to scramble before the exam. Where's this stuff? Where was this talked about? Right? You have it right there. But also, participation is very, very important in online classes, or engagement is very important in online classes, also from a federal level. And so there is pressure from the federal government that if an institution is doing online classes, that we're making sure that the students are engaging in the material, encouraging that. So it is a requirement, and this is in the syllabus, this is a university requirement, that if you do not participate by either watching the videos, doing reading quizzes, doing discussion posts, for 21 straight days, you need to be administratively withdrawn from the course, which could affect your financial aid disbursement. It could affect your financial obligations. So keep up with those note submissions. That's a perfect way to demonstrate, yes, I'm involved in this course. Just like you would if you're coming in the course, coming into a face-to-face class, there you are. This is saying, here I am. Right? And so that participation is very, very important for a variety of reasons, both from an institutional standpoint and some of the things the federal government's concerned about, but then also from your personal success in this course as well. So make sure to complete that those assignments. Grading disputes. There are some assignments in the course where there probably won't be much of a dispute or much of a place for dispute. Multiple choice questions, if it's A, it's A. Now, there might be a couple multiple choice questions you think, well, this might have been worded a little confusing, or the answers were too close together. And if you have a question about that at any point, let me know, right? Contact with me about it. But some of the reflection papers in essays on exams, there's some places where I'm looking for a certain set of criteria. And reflection papers will kind of give you that criteria, what I'm looking for. With reflection papers, it's not so much about specifically what lesson you're drawing, but how you're presenting that. Are you presenting that clearly? Does it line up with what's in the text? Does it reflect, does it demonstrate that you've thought about it instead of just said, oh, here's an idea, right? So that's the kind of thing I'm looking for in the essays, and that's listed in the rubric. But in some of those other places where, I'm a human being and I'm making a judgment based on what you presented to me and the criteria I'm looking for, where you might feel or believe that I have maybe missed something, or I didn't take into consideration something, misunderstood what you were saying, and you would like me to reconsider the grade. You must contact me within 3 days after that was graded and submitted back to you. Now, that's a university policy. That's not my policy. With the with the reading quizzes, the multiple choice quizzes are graded automatically, and so you can see your grade immediately. Might not be able to see what you've gotten wrong and why until after the due date. And so the 3 days would start after that, not necessarily after when you take it, even though you immediately got the grade. For other graded assignments, it's my intention and it's my effort to get them back to you at the latest a week after it has been, after the due date. Right? So within a week after the due date. Sometimes it's much faster than that, but at the very latest, a week. If there is some reason why it's going to be longer than a week, I would let you know about that. But once it's been returned to you, right? Once I've submitted it and the grade's posted on Blackboard, then that 3 days starts. And so contact me about that if you have that concern. I am more than willing to look over it. Like I said, I'm human, I make mistakes. So if you believe that there's some aspect or some area, or you didn't read this paragraph closely enough, I think, because I made this point right here, you know, point that out to me. Let me know what I can do to, let me know where you're concerned, and either I'll come back and say, okay, here's why this was graded this way, or hey, you were right, you know, this is, I did miss this thing, and so your grade is now this. But remember that, 3 days, because after the 3 days, then you don't have as much of a right to appeal. Again, that's a university policy, not necessarily mine. So contact me as soon as possible if you have questions about grades. In this course, we'll be talking about Revelation, as I mentioned, obviously. And so you can Google a ton of stuff about Revelation. But for the assignments in this course, the only things you need to be using are the lecture materials, are the book, and the book of Revelation, and your brain. That's predominantly all you need to do, all you need to use to do well in this class. You do not need to do any sort of outside reading. The papers are not research papers, they're reflection papers. I'm looking for your thoughts. So, you do not need to Google anything, you do not need to go anywhere else. If you have some area where you're not sure about something, you're confused about something, contact me. Let's have a conversation. If you do, however, for whatever reason, Google something, read something in another book, anything like that, make sure you give the appropriate credit. Do not plagiarize in this course. Do not take somebody else's work and present it as your own without giving them, or present it without giving them credit, which is essentially presenting it as your own. So, it's very important. And it's not, you know, these days, we think a lot about ease, and in certain situations, people just borrow ideas from people. You know, sometimes I even do that in lecture without clearly indicating, I got this from this source. You know, I might simply say, well, someone said, or I read once, right? That's different in certain settings. But in a paper presentation, like the primary essays, the reflection essays, if you use somebody else's work, make sure you give them credit. Make sure that you indicate appropriately that this came from this source. So, if you do look at other sources, other websites, make sure you keep track of that, because it's not going to be a thing of, well, I used the thing, I can't remember where I got it from. No, it's plagiarism if you do not cite your source. If you have a question about how to cite sources, you know, get in contact with me. But remember, you do not need to look anything else up outside of this material for these assignments. It's based on you, your brain, the readings, the lecture material. Right? That's what you need, and that's all provided through the Blackboard site. Do your best work, maintain your integrity, you know, be honest in your presentations, you know, be careful, judicious, right? Show those Christian values. It's about integrity, and not just about ease of getting information and trying to skirt, maybe, you know, I don't have time to do this assignment, so I'll just copy and paste. Don't do that, because then we have to have another discussion. that is not pleasant. And so, please make sure that if you do use any other websites, you are very carefully keeping record of what you got from where. But remember, you do not have to do that. So instead of doing that, just use your brain. Right? God gave you a brain, use it. That's what I'm looking for, is your brain, not what somebody else says. I'm looking for your brain, your thoughts about that. If you need academic accommodations because of a documented disability, make sure to get in contact with Project Key. You probably already know to do that. But if you haven't, make sure to get in contact with Dr. Schaefer or Ms. Guy, and they will help you get lined up, whether that's extra time on quizzes or exams. Let's get you on the road to success early. So if this applies to you, let's make sure to get those accommodations in as soon as possible so we can get everything in line. And then finally, getting in contact with me. One of the best ways to get in contact with me is email. For a couple of reasons. First, I check my email regularly. As I sit in my office, I have it up on one of my screens, so I'm always seeing it as messages come. I have it on my phone, so it's easier to access me that way. Secondly, of course, it does keep a record so that in the conversation, say, well, I thought you said this. Well, no, I thought it was this. Right? If we've talked in person or we talk on the phone, right, having that on email, we can go back and say, oh, okay, this is what we decided we were going to do, or this is what you told me, and I forgot to do that, so let's do this now. I am specifically in my office 8:30 to 9:45 Mondays and Wednesdays, 1:30 to 2:45 Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you are on campus or in the area where you can drop in during those times. I'm specifically in my office during those times. I am here a bunch of other times as well, here most of the day, most days. So there are other times we can get together if those times don't work. But certainly, if you're study abroad, email might be the best way. If you're out of town, maybe a phone call. But whatever I can do to help you, let me know what we can do to contact. And as I said before, contacting me about issues as they arise earlier rather than later. Right? So if you know something's coming up this semester, get in touch with me now about it so we can, if we need to make adjustments, we can do that. I try to respond to email within 24 hours, most days, except for weekends and spring break. But if you haven't heard from me within 48 hours, then make sure to email, or feel free to email me again, so that that I have the reminder. Oh, okay. In case I saw it and say, okay, I need to respond later to this and forgot to do it, or if for some reason it got lost. So if you haven't heard from me within 48, feel free to email me again. That, I think, gives us a good overview. Don't forget to double check over the syllabus, explore the Blackboard site. Not everything is up and organized yet, but a lot of things are, so you can get started. For this first week, only requirements are, as far as submission, submit your notes to this, just a basic overview of what we talked about. That'll demonstrate, okay, you read that. And then the introduction on the Blackboard discussion post, so that we know who you are. And so looking forward to the great semester. Hopefully in several weeks you'll have a better understanding of Revelation, and it will be something that will be useful and meaningful to you in your walk with God.